I started my own business at 14, paid off my debts, and bought a house in cash. Then my parents sued me for taking the life my brother deserved and tried to sabotage what I'd built. I fought back and made sure they regret it. Hey Reddit, long-time lurker, first-time poster. I was basically raised by people who thought I owed them just because they gave birth to me. But it wasn't just about that. Grab your snacks and enjoy this clusterfuck of a story. Name's Vincent, 30 male. Growing up in Fairmont, Ohio, was about as exciting as watching paint peel. The town was built around manufacturing plants that had been dying since before I was born. By the time I hit high school, half the factories were closed, and the other half were barely hanging on. Dad worked maintenance at one of the remaining plants, coming home with grease under his nails and complaining about overtime getting cut. Mom worked the register at a grocery store part-time, mostly for the employee discount. Money was always tight. Bills piled up on the kitchen counter, past due notices mixed in with junk mail. The cable got shut off every few months until someone remembered to pay it. Then there was Adrian, my older brother by 2 years. The golden child. Captain of the JV football team, popular with the right crowd, always knew exactly what to say to make our parents smile. The comparison started early. "Why can't you be more like Adrian?" was basically the soundtrack to my childhood. Dad would say it when I brought home a bad grade. Mom would say it when I forgot to take out the trash. Adrian would say it just to be a jerk. I was different, though. While other kids obsessed over sports or school drama, I took apart old electronics trying to figure out how they worked. This didn't make me popular at home. Dad had this look when he'd find me surrounded by broken radio guts on the kitchen table, like I'd personally disappointed him just by existing. The only place I didn't feel like a waste of space was shop class and the computer lab. Mr. D'Angelo, the shop teacher, actually got it. He'd let me stay after school working on projects, teaching me proper soldering and electrical troubleshooting. My cousin Felix was the only family member who treated me decently. He was a year older, worked at his dad's auto shop, and had this way of making everything seem less serious than it was. When family dinners got tense, Felix would crack some joke that somehow made everyone back off without getting himself in trouble. Kid knew how to work a room. Everything changed one Thursday walking home from school. Our neighbor, Mr. Kowalski, was hauling stuff to the curb, and sitting right there was this old point-of-sale system from his hardware store. The thing was ancient, probably from the early 2000s, but it had good bones. I asked if I could have it. He laughed and said the repair guy wanted $300 to fix it. Easier to just buy a new one. Told me to take it if I wanted, just get it off his curb. That POS system became my whole world for the next month. Spent every afternoon in our basement taking it apart, reading technical manuals I found online, watching YouTube videos on outdated systems. Our neighbor, Mrs. Peppers, would poke her head in sometimes asking what I was doing. She was one of those neighbors who knew everything about everyone. Nosy as anything, but in a way that actually helped sometimes. She'd bring me snacks and tell me about other people in the neighborhood who had broken electronics. When I finally got that system working, typing in test transactions and watching them process, it felt pretty good. Mr. Kowalski saw the repaired system when he came over to borrow Dad's ladder. Mentioned it to the guy who owned the auto parts store on Main Street. Next thing I knew, some dude named Rick was at our door offering me $50 to look at his shop's POS system that kept freezing. I fixed it in 2 hours. Simple software issue, corrupted database that needed rebuilding. Rick watched me work, asked questions about what I was doing. When I finished, he handed me $75 instead of the agreed $50. You explained it so I actually understood what was wrong. That's worth something. Word spread fast in a small town. Within a month, I had the owner of a contractor supply shop asking if I could set up an inventory system for him. Then a garage wanted help modernizing their parts tracking. These were all blue-collar businesses running on ancient equipment that was barely functional. They couldn't afford the big corporate solutions that cost thousands, but they'd pay a teenager a few $100 to keep their systems running. Set up shop in our basement. Got a workbench from a yard sale, organized my tools, started keeping spare parts from broken systems. By 15, I was making decent money, enough that I was bringing home $300-400 a week. My parents' reaction was predictable. Dad complained about my equipment taking up space in the basement. Never mind that the space had been empty before. But when I brought home $600 that first month, suddenly they were interested. Mom took half, said I needed to contribute to the household, start paying my way. I was 15, still a kid, but arguing didn't get me anywhere. So I started keeping 2 sets of books. They could take their cut from what I showed them. The rest went into a lockbox I kept hidden behind the water heater. Meanwhile, Adrian got a new laptop for school. got gas money whenever he asked, got his football equipment paid for without anyone blinking. My business? That was just a phase I'd grow out of, according to Dad. But it kept growing, though. Auto parts stores, hardware shops, small contractor supply places, they all had the same problems. Systems that barely worked, no real inventory tracking, everything done on paper or ancient computers. I started building custom solutions for them. Simple POS systems with basic inventory management, reliable and cheap. By 16, I was making more than Mom's part-time job brought in. I'd hired Felix to help with installations. The kid was good with his hands and could talk to customers without sounding like a robot. We split jobs 70-30, and he was happy to have extra cash while I built something real. That's when I made the mistake of bringing home a bigger check than usual. $900 from setting up a system at a plumbing supply company. Showed it to my parents at dinner, probably looking for some recognition or whatever. Dad's eyes widened. The next day, he sat me down with this serious look and explained that now that I was earning real money, I needed to start paying rent. $400 a month for a bedroom in a house they already owned. In my parents' minds, I owed them for existing in their house for 16 years. This became the pattern. The more I made, the more they took. Started as rent, then became household contributions, then became whatever they needed money for that month. Adrian needed books for college prep? That's coming from Vincent. Car needs new tires? Vincent's got it covered. I learned real quick that in our house, there were two standards. Adrian's, where everything got handed to him, and mine, where everything got taken away. The real wake-up call? It came right after my 17th birthday. A credit card statement showed up in the mail, my name on it, account I'd never opened. Then another one, 3 different cards, all maxed out, $28,000 of debt in my name. I sat on my bed staring at the numbers, doing the math on how long it would take minimum wage me to pay this off. The answer made me want to throw up. I cornered them in the living room, threw the statements on the coffee table. Mom didn't even try to deny it, just said Adrian needed a car for college and they needed to fix the roof. Said my business had given us good credit, so they used it. You stole my identity. Dad barely looked up from the TV. Don't get dramatic. It's family money anyway. You've been living here free for years. I've been paying you $400 a month for the past year, and now you'll pay more. Think of it as your contribution to your brother's future. That night, I realized they didn't see me as their son. They saw me as a resource. And Adrian? He walked past my room later that night, stopped in the doorway with this smirk. Thanks for the car, little bro. That's when I knew I had to get out. Called Felix the next morning. Met him at the diner on the edge of town. Spread the credit card statements between us on the table, right next to the burnt coffee and stale donuts. Felix looked at the numbers, then at me. Holy crap, Vincent. This is straight up identity theft. They're my parents. Doesn't matter. This is illegal as anything. Felix put me in touch with his mom's friend, a lawyer named Marlene who sometimes took cases pro bono. She looked over everything and laid out my options. Press criminal charges or pursue legal emancipation. I couldn't bring myself to press charges. Despite everything, they were still my parents. But emancipation would legally separate me from them before 18. Cut all their control over my finances. Building the case took 3 months. Documented everything. Unauthorized credit cards, bank statements showing consistent business income, recordings I made of conversations where my parents casually discussed using my earnings. Even tracked every dollar I'd contributed to household expenses. The hardest part wasn't gathering evidence. It was accepting I was really doing this. My decision solidified when I caught Mom applying for a 4th credit card online, using my social security number like it was hers. Didn't even try to hide it when I walked in. Just closed the laptop and told me to mind my own business. The day they got served, the house turned into a war zone. Dad's face went purple. Started yelling about betrayal and everything they'd sacrificed. Adrian stood there, shaking his head like I was the jerk. How could you do this to us? Mom asked, tears streaming. Real convincing performance. I'm not doing anything to you. I'm protecting myself. We're your family, Adrian said. Family takes care of each other. Funny, I don't feel very taken care of. I moved in with Bruce D'Angelo during the 3 weeks before the hearing. Bruce was Mr. D'Angelo's older brother, a retired electrician who lived alone in a house too big for one person. Slept on his couch, ran my business from his garage, and tried to ignore the constant calls from my parents demanding I come home. They tried everything. Called my clients. Showed up at Bruce's house claiming I'd stolen money from them. Even got the family priest to call me about honoring my parents. The courthouse hearing was rough. Mom played the devastated parent perfectly, crying about her troubled son who'd always been difficult. Said they'd only taken control of my finances to help me since I was just a kid who didn't understand money. The judge reviewed every document, looked at the unauthorized credit cards, listened to the recordings, read through the bank statements. When she delivered her verdict, she didn't hold back. Said the court clearly saw financial exploitation that made continued cohabitation impossible. Granted the petition. At 17, I was legally an adult. Bruce helped me find a place to live, a converted garage apartment behind an old warehouse on the industrial side of town. Filed paperwork, establishing Van Lentini Systems as a real business, opened bank accounts my parents couldn't touch. Reality hit hard. After rent and business expenses, almost every dollar went to minimum payments on that debt. Made a spreadsheet tracking everything. Initial projection to pay it off. 6 years. 6 years of my life, paying for their choices. My family cut contact completely. Adrian blocked my number. My parents refused to acknowledge me. That first Thanksgiving, I ate gas station fried chicken in my apartment and worked on a POS system for a hardware store in the next town over. Mrs. Peppers showed up with a plate of food, though. Somehow found out where I was living. Didn't ask questions, just handed me the plate and told me she'd saved my mail that kept getting delivered to my old address. Felix came by most weekends with snacks and stories from family dinners I wasn't invited to. He'd fill me in on the drama. Never pressured me to reconcile. Just kept showing up, which meant more than he probably knew. 8 months after emancipation, the owner of a medium-sized auto parts chain approached me about overhauling their entire system. 5 locations, all running different ancient setups. None of them talking to each other. He wanted unified inventory tracking and a modern POS system. This was way beyond anything I'd done before. But I didn't tell him that. Just quoted him a price and a timeline, then spent the next 3 weeks learning everything I could about network systems and centralized databases. Felix helped with the physical installations while I handled the software side. We worked nights and weekends, testing and retesting until everything ran smooth. When that system went live and actually worked, I realized I'd been thinking too small. These blue-collar businesses needed real solutions, not just band-aids on dying equipment. They needed systems built specifically for their workflow. I pivoted completely. Started focusing exclusively on rugged POS and inventory systems for blue-collar stores. Built a reputation for systems that were bulletproof and practical. Solid, reliable setups that helped shops run smoother. By 18, I had more work than I could handle alone. Hired 2 guys from the community college who actually knew what they were doing. Moved the operation from my garage apartment to a proper shop space I rented from the same warehouse owner. One of them, Mason, had worked retail and knew the pain points. He'd suggest features I wouldn't have thought of. Quick keys for common items, shift reports that actually made sense. Made the systems better. The business journal in the next county over ran a small piece about local businesses using custom tech solutions. Mentioned my company. That brought in more clients from surrounding towns. Got invited to speak at a small business expo about affordable technology solutions. After my presentation, some corporate rep approached with an acquisition offer. Wanted to buy me out, turn my systems into a product they could sell. The number was tempting. Would have cleared my debt and then some. Spent about 10 minutes considering it before saying no. This wasn't just a business. It was proof that everyone who'd written me off was wrong. Around 19, I started getting into woodworking. Working with my hands on non-digital projects helped clear my head. Built a workbench, then a coffee table, then small furniture pieces for friends. The business kept growing steadily. More clients, more systems, better reputation. Started specializing in specific industries. Auto parts stores, contractor supply shops, industrial equipment suppliers. Built templates I could customize instead of starting from scratch each time. By 20, I'd added vehicle inventory tracking for used car lots to my services. Then expanded into equipment rental tracking for tool rental places. Each edition built on the last, creating this network of blue-collar businesses that all needed similar solutions. The debt payments remained constant, though. Every month, hundreds of dollars disappearing into interest and principal. Watching that number decrease slowly while my business grew was frustrating. Started keeping a second spreadsheet just tracking the debt payoff. Updated it weekly, calculated how many clients I'd need to double my payments, how many months that would shave off. But I kept grinding. Lived cheap, worked hard, saved what I could. Felix kept me connected to family news whether I wanted it or not. Adrian had gotten kicked out of college for cheating. Moved back home. Parents fighting constantly about money. Mom picked up extra shifts. Dad's plant had more layoffs. Their house was falling apart. Roof leaked, furnace dying. Part of me felt bad. Small part. The rest remembered $28,000 in fraudulent debt. Mrs. Peppers would drop by my shop sometimes with food, always finding some excuse about being in the neighborhood. She'd casually mention seeing my parents at the grocery store, how tired they looked. Around 21, I started hitting the shooting range on weekends. Something Felix got me into. There's something calming about the focus required for target shooting. Everything else falls away when you're trying to hit center mass at 25 yards. The real breakthrough came when I landed a contract with a regional hardware store chain. 12 locations, all needing system overhauls. Biggest project I'd ever taken on. Hired 3 more people to help handle the workload, rented additional shop space. That project put Van Lentini systems on the map regionally. By the time I turned 22, I had a solid client base, reliable income, and a reputation for building systems that actually worked. Still wasn't even what most people would call successful yet, but I was making it work, building something real, and doing it entirely on my own. The debt finally hit zero about a month after my 23rd birthday. 6 years of grinding, living cheap, directing every extra dollar to those payments. The day I made that final payment, I sat in my apartment staring at the confirmation screen. Account paid in full. I felt this weird emptiness, like I'd been focused on that goal for so long that finishing it left me without direction. Felix came by that night with takeout. "So what now?" he asked. "Now I figure out what I actually want instead of just surviving." With the debt cleared, I started thinking longer term. Made my first real investment. Bought a duplex that needed work. Spent 6 months fixing it up in my spare time, then rented out both units. Steady passive income that could survive if my business hit a rough patch. Started looking at properties to actually live in. For 6 years after emancipation, family contact was basically zero. Just Felix's updates about the ongoing disasters at home. The usual dysfunction. Then, the invitation arrived. Plain envelope, printed card. "You're invited to celebrate Leonard Van Lentini's retirement." Stared at it for a solid hour. Dad was retiring from the plant, and apparently they wanted me there to celebrate. Felix called that same day. "You get the invitation?" "Yeah." "You going?" "Haven't decided. Mom's been asking if I thought you'd show up. Seems important to them." Something didn't add up. Against every instinct telling me this was a bad idea, I RSVP'd yes. The retirement party was at the VFW Hall in Fairmont. Nothing fancy, just the standard retirement setup. Bad coffee, grocery store sheet cake, a slideshow of Dad's career that nobody actually watched. Walking in felt surreal. Familiar faces from childhood, all looking at me with varying degrees of surprise. Conversations paused when I entered. My parents approached together. Dad had aged hard. More gray, more weight around the middle, shoulders permanently hunched from years of physical labor. Mom had that same carefully maintained appearance, hair styled, makeup perfect, but wearing this pinched expression like life had disappointed her. "Vincent, glad you could make it," Dad said, formal, distant. "Congratulations on the retirement." Adrian hung back initially, then came over with this fake smile plastered on. "Little bro, long time." Adrian, "Heard your little business is doing okay. It pays the bills." They introduced me to Dad's co-workers as our other son who works with computers. Throughout the evening, I kept my distance. Made small talk with people I barely remembered while observing the dynamics. Something felt off. The party seemed more expensive than it should be for a factory worker's retirement. Near the food table, I overheard my uncle talking to one of Dad's former co-workers. Now that Vincent's back in the picture, Leonard's hoping for some help. Kid's done well for himself. About time he stepped up for family. Later, catching fragments of conversations. Plans for a big RV Dad supposedly bought. Mom mentioning a cruise they had booked. Adrian casually dropping that he'd just put a down payment on a condo in the city. None of it made sense. Mrs. Peppers was there too. She sidled up to me at one point, holding a plate of the sad-looking finger foods. "Interesting party," she said. "Lot of expensive choices for someone retiring from a factory." Noticed that too. "Your parents have been telling people you're doing very well." Very well indeed. The way she said it made it clear she was warning me about something. Driving back to my apartment that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was up. The sudden invitation after years of silence. The expensive party. The casual mentions of my success to everyone there. It felt wrong. Then, 4 weeks later, while Dad was supposedly enjoying his new retirement, a courier delivered papers to my shop. Legal complaint. Leonard Van Lentini, Marlene Van Lentini, and Adrian Van Lentini as plaintiffs. Me as defendant. They were suing me for compensation, claiming my success was built on early support and resources provided by the family, demanding 35% ownership of Van Lentini systems, plus $150,000 in damages for emotional distress and lost opportunities. The affidavit from Adrian claimed I'd stolen business opportunities that should have been his, that our parents had invested in me while he received nothing, that I owed the family for years of housing and support. Reading through page after page of fabricated garbage, the retirement party suddenly made perfect sense. It was a setup, creating a narrative of family reunion, making sure people saw us together, gathering information about my business before launching their attack. Called my business attorney Julian immediately, forwarded everything. His response after reviewing the complaint: "This is creative fiction. They're claiming they provided critical early support for your business development. They stole from me, opened credit cards in my name and stuck me with the debt. I know. We have all that documented from your emancipation case. Their claims are garbage, but we need to take this seriously. Family lawsuits get ugly fast." Assembled a legal team within 3 days. Julian led it, brought in Marlene, who'd handled my emancipation. Their assessment was mixed. Legally, my family's claims were garbage. I'd been emancipated specifically because of financial exploitation, all thoroughly documented. But they weren't after a legal victory. They wanted a settlement, banking on me paying them off to avoid the hassle and potential damage to my business reputation. That realization made me angry. Told my team to fight this all the way. Spare no expense. As the legal process started, we discovered just how calculated they'd been. Through discovery, learned they'd been monitoring my business for years. Adrian had created fake LinkedIn profiles to connect with my clients, gathering information about projects and revenue. My parents had been asking Felix about my business whenever he visited them, pumping him for details. Most disturbing was evidence that someone had attempted to access my business bank accounts using security question answers. Questions about my childhood that only family would know. Our IT guy traced the attempts to an IP address that matched my parents' internet provider. The security implications were serious enough that I implemented enhanced protections on everything. Changed every security question to answers that had nothing to do with my actual history. Felix felt terrible when he found out they'd been using information he'd casually mentioned. I didn't know. They'd just ask how you were doing, and I thought they actually cared. Not your fault. They're good at playing people. The emotional hit was worse than the emancipation had been. I'd spent 6 years building a life completely separate from them, proven I could make it on my own. Now they were trying to claw their way back in, not because they cared, but because they saw money they thought they deserved. Started spending more time at the shooting range. Something about the focus required helped clear my head. Felix would join me most weekends, and we'd burn through ammunition while not talking about the lawsuit. The lawsuit went semi-public fast. A few clients asked about it, concerned about stability. Had to reassure them multiple times that this wouldn't affect their service. The discovery process revealed the real story. Emails between my parents and Adrian going back almost 2 years, plotting how to reconnect with me specifically to pursue financial claims. Mom had been saving articles about my business, taking screenshots of social media posts. Adrian had created a detailed spreadsheet estimating my company's worth based on client numbers and industry averages. They'd been building a case for months before the retirement party. During depositions, their case collapsed. Asked about specific support they'd provided to my early business, Dad claimed letting me use the basement and electricity were significant contributions. Mom claimed she'd emotionally supported my work. Adrian's deposition was almost entertaining. When pressed about his claim that I'd stolen opportunities from him, he couldn't articulate what those opportunities were. The case went before Judge Eldridge. During proceedings, my parents' testimony got more desperate. Dad tried claiming he'd provided crucial early mentorship and business guidance. Under cross-examination, admitted the extent of this mentorship was telling me to work harder. Mom's testimony focused on emotional investment and sacrifice. Marlene countered with the credit card debt, the documented financial exploitation, the fact that they'd been extracting money from me since I was 15. When asked about their recent purchases, the RV, the cruise, Adrian's condo down payment, Dad reluctantly admitted they'd taken out a loan based on anticipated settlement proceeds. After 8 months of legal maneuvering, Judge Eldridge issued his ruling. Dismissed the case entirely with a harsh opinion that called my family's claims demonstrably false and potentially fraudulent. Ordered them to pay my legal fees and court costs. The total would likely force them to sell their house. Outside the courthouse, Adrian tried to approach me. Security moved to intercept, but I waved them off. "This is ridiculous, Vincent. We're family. Family doesn't commit identity theft. You really gonna let them lose their house? I'm not doing anything. They did this to themselves." Dad was standing nearby looking defeated. "We raised you. Gave you everything." "No. You took everything." Walking away from that courthouse, I felt nothing. Just empty. Felix met me at a diner later, ate and watched baseball on the TV above the counter. Family's gonna be a mess now, he said. They were always a mess. The months after the lawsuit were strange. Complete legal victory, but I was still dealing with lingering anger and this weird sense of loss. Threw myself into work, took on bigger projects, expanded into new markets, started offering maintenance contracts, built a team of 6 people who knew what they were doing, bought a project truck, 1985 Ford F-150 that barely ran, spent evenings and weekends in my garage tearing it apart and putting it back together. There's satisfaction in bringing a dead vehicle back to life. Mrs. Peppers would stop by sometimes, bring me food, ask how the rebuild was going. Never mentioned my family unless I brought them up first. Just kept being a supportive presence without making a big deal about it. Van Lentini Systems continued growing steadily. Started getting calls from 3-4 towns over. Even landed a client in another state who'd heard about our work. Then came the call at 11 p.m. on a Thursday. The regional hardware chain, 12 locations, my biggest contract, their entire system was down. Inventory locked. Sales terminals frozen. Busy weekend coming up, and they were dead in the water. "Get here now," the district manager said. No pleasantries, just urgency. Grabbed my emergency kit, called Felix and one of my developers. Met them at the main location within an hour. The place was chaos. Frustrated staff, backed up customers, registers showing error codes I'd never seen before. Stakes were clear. Lose this client, word spreads through the business community. After the lawsuit, I couldn't afford a Vincent Systems failed hard story making the rounds. We pulled an all-nighter, debugging code, swapping hardware, restoring backups from 3 days prior. Around 4 a.m., found the problem. A massive power surge from a storm 2 nights ago had fried the main server. They'd ignored my recommendation about installing a better surge protector 6 months earlier. It didn't matter whose fault it was. This was my responsibility. Had to rebuild the database from scratch, manually verify every product code-matched inventory counts. Felix ran between locations checking their backup terminals while I worked. Mason called in sick employees to help recount stock. By 7 a.m., we had it running. The store opened on time. The district manager shook my hand, exhausted but relieved. "You came through. That matters." Driving home as the sun came up, I realized something. This wasn't luck anymore. I could handle real problems. I ran an actual business. The kid who'd started in his parents' basement was long gone. Around 25, I started seriously looking at property. Wanted somewhere that felt like mine instead of just a place I was renting. Found a small house on 2 acres outside of town. Nothing fancy, built in the 1960s. Needed work but had good bones. The price was reasonable, and I'd saved enough to buy it outright. No mortgage, just walked in and wrote a check. Spent 8 months fixing it up. Felix helped with the heavy work. We'd spend weekends hanging drywall or installing cabinets. When the house was done, I threw a small party. Just my work crew, Felix, friends from the shooting range. Mrs. Peppers showed up with enough food to feed twice as many people. Standing on my back porch that night, I felt something new. Contentment, maybe, or just the absence of constant stress. 2 years after the lawsuit, I got an email from Adrian. His marriage had imploded. The condo got foreclosed. He was back home with our parents who'd sold their house and moved into a cramped apartment. The email didn't ask for money directly, just said he was reassessing priorities and wanted to clear the air. I ignored it. Felix told me the family situation was rough. Dad's retirement money had run out faster than expected. Mom was working full-time again, 2 jobs now. Adrian couldn't hold down steady employment, kept getting fired for attitude problems. I listened but didn't engage. Their problems weren't mine to solve. I started dating around this time. Met a woman named Karina at a woodworking class. She was an engineer, had her own thing going on. We started hanging out, taking it slow. The business hit a milestone at 26, 100 active client accounts across 3 states. Hired 2 more people, expanded the shop space. Started offering training programs for businesses on maintaining their own systems. Things with Karina got serious gradually. She moved in, brought her own tools, took over half the garage workspace. Made the place feel like an actual home. Mrs. Peppers started visiting both of us. She and Karina got along great. By 27, Van Lentini Systems had grown enough that I could step back from daily operations. I focused on bigger picture stuff. Life had settled. Work during the week, projects and hobbies on weekends, occasional trips with Karina, normal stuff. The business crossed 150 active clients that year. Mrs. Peppers mentioned seeing my mom at the grocery store sometimes. Said she looked tired, worn down. I didn't feel bad about it. They'd made their choices. I'd made mine. By 28, Van Lentini Systems was profitable and growing. The house was paid off. The truck ran like a dream. Karina and I had been together for 2 years. Everything I'd built was working. Then Felix called one Tuesday morning earlier than usual. You need to hear this. Adrian's working for CompuTrack Solutions now. CompuTrack was my biggest competitor. Similar services but charged more and oversold features clients didn't need. So he's been calling your clients, offering them migration packages to switch to CompuTrack. He's using information he got from the lawsuit discovery. Client lists, project details, all of it. I sat there processing this. That information was sealed. Apparently, he kept copies before it was sealed. Now he's using it to poach your business. This was different from the lawsuit. This was Adrian actively trying to destroy what I'd built using my own client list against me. Called Julian immediately. He confirmed that while ethically questionable, Adrian hadn't technically violated any laws. The discovery information had been in his possession before being sealed. Can we stop him? Not easily. We can send cease and desist letters, but he'll claim normal sales outreach. Over the next 2 weeks, 3 clients called asking about CompuTrack's offers. Adrian was telling them Van Lentini Systems was financially unstable, looking to sell. They should switch before things went under. All lies, but effective if you didn't know better. I went on the offensive, reached out to every client personally, face to face, brought Felix to installations. We spent 2 weeks visiting shops, demonstrating new features, offering extended warranties at no cost. Most clients appreciated the direct contact. Several mentioned Adrian's calls seemed desperate, which made them suspicious. But Adrian wasn't done. Started spreading rumors that Van Lentini Systems was under investigation for fraud. Completely fabricated but damaging. Mrs. Peppers heard about it from someone at her church. Called me immediately to warn me. But the rumor spreading backfired. One of my clients, Rick from the auto parts chain, called after hearing the rumors. He'd checked with the BBB and state licensing board. Nothing on file about me at all. I explained the family situation, the lawsuit, the whole history. Your own brother is trying to tank your business? Long pause. That's really low. I'm going to make some calls. Within a week, the business community had spread the word about Adrian's tactics. CompuTrack's reputation took a hit just for employing him. Several shop owners called me specifically to say they'd shut Adrian down immediately. Adrian's gambit failed. Worse than failed. It strengthened my position. Clients who'd been casual became loyal. New clients approached me specifically because they'd heard how I'd handled it. CompuTrack fired Adrian after 6 weeks. The real win came 3 months later. Regional manager for one of the largest equipment rental companies in the Midwest called about a partnership. They'd heard about us through the business community. That situation showed us you've got integrity, he said during our meeting. Interested in a contract for 43 locations? Biggest opportunity I'd ever had. We negotiated for 2 weeks. The final deal was a 3-year contract with options to extend. Revenue that would double my business size. Signed it on a Friday afternoon. Sat in my office afterward, looking at the contract, trying to process what had just happened. 2 weeks later, an email arrived from the state licensing board. Formal complaint filed against Van Lentini Systems, alleging unsafe installation practices and misleading clients. Anonymous report. Required investigation before contracts could proceed. My stomach dropped. Called Julian immediately. We need to deal with this fast. We dug into it. The complaint cited specific projects from 3 years ago, details about my early business structure, mentioned the basement workspace at my parents' house. Information only someone with inside knowledge would have. This is your family, Julian said. Yes, of course it was them. These people never give up. Filed a detailed response with documentation proving every installation met code, included client testimonials, showed our safety record was spotless. The licensing board investigated for 2 weeks. The complaint got dismissed as baseless. No evidence, anonymous source with apparent grudge, contradicted by extensive documentation. Even after everything, they were still trying to reach into my life and destroy what I'd built. Still failing. The business community backing me reinforced what I knew. Reputation isn't built on what your family says about you. It's built on what you actually do. The business expansion happened fast after that. Hired more people within 3 months. Leased larger shop space, then bought the building outright instead of renting. Made sense financially, and owning the space felt right. Made Felix a partner around the same time. 20% ownership? He'd been there from the beginning. Deserved a real stake. We signed the partnership papers at a coffee shop, just the two of us. This is really happening, Felix said. Yeah, couldn't have done it without you. Sure you could have. Would have just taken longer. By 29, we had over 200 active clients across 5 states. The business I'd started in my parents' basement had become something legitimate, worth somewhere around $500,000 with steady growth projections. Karina and I got engaged. Mrs. Peppers started bringing wedding magazines. Felix threw me a low-key bachelor party. Just fishing and pizza. Felix filled me in occasionally on the family situation. Adrian was working retail, living with our parents in their cramped apartment. Dad's health issues made work impossible. Mom was exhausted from multiple jobs. The whole situation was a disaster of their own making. I never reached out, never engaged. Standing in my shop one evening, I realized the best revenge is building something no one else can touch. Dad tried to reach out once through Mrs. Peppers. Wanted to talk, to reconcile. Begged her to convince me to give them a chance. Not interested, I told her. Some bridges once burned should stay ash. By 30, I had what I'd been building toward. A successful business, a good relationship, and people around me who cared. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.